This is Two Wheelbarrows in a Place We Call Home with Josh Carroll and Brent Rollins.
Hello, Spraylock Nation, as Joshua usually says. I'm Brent Rollins, and I'm here today with Fred Land. And Fred is the owner of Spraylock Concrete Protection and Spraylock Eco Adhesives. And he's joined today against his will. Just kidding. But glad to have him on this side of the camera for once. And also, you'll notice that Josh Carroll's not here today. And I'm hoping that Fred will find it in his heart to put a monkey in somewhere, since the last video they did that I wasn't in, there was a monkey stand-in for me. So Fred, without further ado, tell me a little background. Where'd you grow up?
Born and raised in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Yep. And I've spent, I don't know, I'd say up till most of my life until late teens maybe. Then graduated into kind of North Georgia and lived there until, probably, I don't know, mid-30s, and then I've lived in Tennessee since.
So North Georgia is sort of the world's sort of center for activity regarding flooring.
Yeah,
as you know.
Yeah.
And what influence did that have on you in your career as far as being close to the epicenter of the flooring world?
Well, quite a lot, actually. Once I entered the business world, I started working with a guy I went to school with, and we got into the adhesive business in the Dalton area. And so if you're going to do anything in the Dalton area, it probably needs to have floor covering in mind, or you're not going to do very much,
right?
Especially back in those days. So we developed various adhesives for the floor covering companies, and I went around selling to those, and so started learning about carpet and so forth at a pretty young age.
So your roots run pretty deep in the flooring industry, from what I'm gathering here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So those from those early beginnings, the eco adhesives then began to take off. And you guys really were killing it in the 90s and and then on into the 2000s but I don't know the whole story.
Yeah.
So I wanted to.
Yeah. Once we started the adhesive company, we had several liquid formulas. We kind of targeted with companies that made carpet sample books.
Mm-hmm.
So we made various adhesives to put those together, and we'd sell to the sample book companies. And then we'd also sell certain products to the carpet mills for smaller type things, not for carpet assembly per se.
Gotcha.
And then we started an aerosol company shortly thereafter, within the first couple of years of starting the adhesive business, because we couldn't get the only aerosol product that we had that sprayed. We could not get a company to run that on time or to run it well. So we got frustrated and decided to do it ourselves.
Gotcha.
And so we got into the aerosol industry that way. And then that was through the 80s and probably in the mid 90s.
Oh, okay.
And then from there, we, back in those days, chemicals were cool. And then somewhere into the 90s, chemicals became uncool.
Yes.
So we decided we wanted to manufacture adhesives that were environmentally friendly, if you will. Pour it out on the ground, no one cares, you're not polluting anything. Of course, we don't pour it on the ground, but other chemicals you pour on the ground, and it's ruined your life.
So when that change happened that you're discussing, and again, I'm not a flooring guy per se. I've only know what I've read, but or guess at what I've read in the past. And one of the things that I've run across is the discussion about cutback adhesives, and when those went away, primarily because of content, some nasty content that was in some of the cutback adhesives. And then everybody kind of migrated towards some water-based adhesives. And those water-based adhesives were susceptible to a little more user error or environmental conditions that the cutback adhesives had not been. Is that fair to say?
Yes. Okay. The cutback and the I'll call it, for lack of a better word, the chemical. Many things are chemicals, including water-based products, but chemicals with VOCs and so forth those had tremendous water-resistant properties. And so the flooring industry really didn't have a problem with concrete moisture or moisture coming from any other area causing flooring failures. So when that transition started occurring to water-based adhesives, it just turned into a big mess. And so fortunately, we were kind of on the leading edge of that. The odd thing is, instead of putting it in a bucket and pouring it out on the floor and scraping it out with a trowel, we're bringing a spray can along. And, most people think you're crazy when you bring something like that into a job environment, because that's not how it's done.
Right, exactly.
My grandpappy didn't do it, my daddy didn't do it, and I don't do it that way. So it was very different and unusual, but we didn't have any nasty chemicals in an aerosol can.
Yep.
We didn't have any nasty propellants, and it wasn't flammable, and it really didn't have any odors. And it was fast, and it didn't seem to care what moisture did.
Excellent, excellent. But you did eventually run into the concrete treatment product at some point before it became Spray Lock Concrete Protection. Can you shed a little light on how that came about? What happened, or what were the events surrounding you becoming aware of the products that eventually became Spray Lock Concrete Protection products?
Yeah, probably around 2000. I want to say maybe 2008, 2007, 2008. We were selling our adhesive products in Australia, and the distributor there introduced us to a concrete treatment product that seemed to do very unusual things for concrete. The reason that intrigued me is our adhesives worked well for moisture levels in concrete up to a certain point. But there was always a small percentage, say 5 to 10% of the slabs out there that would be what I would call the slab from hell.
Yeah.
And it's pumping visible moisture, and the flooring can't survive. My adhesive probably could, but the flooring couldn't.
Gotcha.
So, we were always, I was kind of in the back of my mind curious, it would be nice to have something for the slab from hell. And so when I was introduced to this product, the concrete treatment, I found it interesting. And the guy who recommended it, he was reputable. So, I thought, well, I'll take a look at this and see if it fits a little segment of the market that we have to walk away from. So we started experimenting with this product. We thought it came from Australia because that's where the guy found it, and that's where it was used. And so we tinkered around with it for a couple of years just to see if it worked or not. And had to learn how to use it, learn what the rules were, when to use it, when not to use it. And we found that it truly did stop moisture from flowing through concrete.
Excellent.
Kind of didn't understand why, and didn't really understand a whole lot about concrete. But, I was like, this could be a game changer. And, our spray adhesive, it's kind of out there and kind of different because it's not mainstream. So the fact that this concrete treatment wasn't mainstream had a high appeal factor to me. I don't want to do something everybody else does.
Right.
I want to do something unique and different.
Yeah. So would you say the innovation is important to you? The idea of being an innovator?
Yeah.
Okay.
Very much so.
Okay.
Very much so. And so, so we experimented with it for a couple of years, and I'm like, I think this is something we need to take a serious look at. So then we discovered that the product was actually made in Texas, just outside of Dallas. And that was a big surprise. And so a meeting was arranged to meet with the family that owned this technology. And the inventor, his name was Bill Ward, and he had been a private contractor, if I remember the facts correctly, for Halliburton. And they were doing a lot of work in offshore drilling in the Gulf of Mexico. And so in Bill's work with them in the early 70s, they would have concrete mix problems, and that would create a leaky well casing in the ocean. And, you don't want to introduce salt water into the oil you're extracting from beneath the surface of the ocean. So they had permeability issues and in some cases failures. And so in a couple of situations of desperation, they're like, hey, you got any ideas? And Bill had been tinkering around with developing a colloidal silica.
Yep.
And nobody was pretty much doing anything like that back then.
Right.
So,
And we're talking what, the late 70s, right? When Bill, is that what Bill was telling you?
yeah,
Okay.
somewhere in the maybe mid 70s, somewhere along in
Mid-70s,
there,
okay.
if I remember correctly. And so he was able to use this product that he had been experimenting with. They put it down the well casing, mixed it in with the concrete, and solved the problem. And so he did this on several wells that they had issues with, and he made enough money to where he could kind of go off and try and do his own thing.
Okay.
And so then he spent the next several decades, building a little market niche for himself, and he didn't like the limelight, so he kind of worked through other people, if you will,
Sure,
and let them use their name and marketing and so forth. He just wanted to make product.
Gotcha.
And he wanted to make product and try to solve a big problem in the concrete industry, which is movement of moisture.
Oh, excellent. So after that conversation that you had with the family and getting to meet Bill for the first time, one of the ways that I've described it whenever I'm asked about the history of spray lock, and that's the reason that we wanted to do this podcast, is to clear up some of the telephone game that happens when by the time me or a sales guy is talking about the history of spray lock, sometimes our facts get a little distorted. I have heard of a few people in the past saying some things like we were used in the Exxon Valdez disaster, and as far as I know, that wasn't the case.
No.
So sometimes people get their facts crossed. So thank you very much for spending time with me today. But I wanted to ask, that first meeting with Bill that you had, how quickly did you realize that this could be a really nice relationship? Was it immediately, or was it? Oh,
right away. Bill said that he had, many interested parties try to pursue him to buy the technology and, try to get it from him one way or another, either honestly or dishonestly. So he had learned to be very careful, and we just hit it off. I mean, it was, I don't know, kind of unusual the way we just hit it right off.
Excellent.
And so we just sat down and had a conversation, and he wanted to know what my intentions were with the technology. And I'm like, I want to manufacture it and control the sale of it, and just see what I can do with the technology. I think it's a unique problem solver, and I like solving problems.
Absolutely.
So we kind of worked out a deal to where we would have a long-term relationship. I wouldn't just take it from them and run, but we would kind of merge isn't the right word, but we would work together on this for the foreseeable future.
Gotcha.
And so his son-in-law, Dennis Rice, was more of the day-to-day operations hands-on guy. So at that time, Bill's health was declining, and he wasn't able to be very active in the business. And it was an extra motivator for him to maybe be open to doing something different. So yeah, we hit it off, and it didn't take but a couple of months to figure out an agreement. And so in the summer of 2010, we basically worked things out where spray lock concrete protection was born.
Excellent.
And then I had to learn about concrete.
Yes, sir. And if I remember correctly, it wasn't too much longer after that you and I began working together on some things where I was working at the university, but consulting at the time. And my background has been concrete my entire life. So it was a nice fit. And I knew I liked you first time I met you. And from there, we tried to work through all the ins and outs and where the product performs well, where it doesn't perform as well, and where it absolutely fails if you mess up and do certain things. So it took us a little bit of time to get that going. But once we did, the success speaks for itself. I mean, there's been hundreds of millions of square feet of concrete treated with the product, to my knowledge.
Yes.
And the challenges in the early days of finding out the best way to describe what the product is doing and how it performs now has been well worth that effort, hasn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, very much so. And it's interesting that how you kind of brought yourself into the path of history, because prior to finding you, one of our big frustrations was, one, we didn't really know anything about concrete.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that mix elements together, cement, sand, gravel, and water, and poof, it gets all nice and soupy, and a short time later it sets up hard, and voila, you have concrete. Well, it's not so simple as that.
Yes,
it's
sir.
not so simple. So the more we started digging into it, the more we realized how complicated it was. And we were trying to experiment with it in the lab. With our adhesives, we have our own, we formulate, manufacture our own adhesives. And then we also have a testing lab. And when we develop an adhesive, one of the first things we try to do is we try to find out where it won't work.
Right.
I want to know what its limits are. How far can we push this for it to not break, but just not work?
Yes, sir.
Not work for the intended purpose. And so that way, once you find out what that limit is, then you back up several feet from it, and that's where you make your claims. So that way, I know within a very broad range of how the product's going to be used, and it's not going to fail.
Right.
Because we've done everything to it conceivably to make it fail. So we try to do the same thing with spray lock concrete protection, and we were failing at even trying to get it to do its basic function in a crude laboratory environment,
Yes.
not knowing anything about concrete really, other than how to do a basic mix design. So the interesting thing, even in an indoor environment, is trying to figure out what the parameters are for the product to show itself off. And the big challenge that you have is perfect concrete doesn't need anything.
Right.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
Moisture doesn't move through perfect concrete.
Yep.
And it's real easy to produce perfect concrete in a laboratory environment.
Yes, it
in
is.
an indoor setting where you have climate control, you don't have weather, you don't have finishing issues. You can control the mix perfectly. So all of our efforts were getting frustrated, and I'm like, what have I bought? Have I bought something that doesn't work? Because I can't really get it to show itself. And yet I spent 2 or 3 years in the field testing it, so I knew it worked.
Right.
I knew somehow it stopped moisture from flowing. So we were banging our heads against the wall when we encountered you, and we posed the challenge to you that, we've got to figure out how to make imperfect concrete that could simulate what would be going on in the field, so we can find out the limits of our product, what we can and can't do. And so that was the brilliance of running into you, and because we tried several others and they couldn't do it.
Yeah, and I think rather than brilliance, I would classify it as fortunate events that led me to that point, which 20 years in the ready-mix concrete business and understanding the difference between field concrete and lab concrete was something that I was able to bring to the table. I don't consider myself like a top-notch concrete research guy, but because of that field experience, we were able to duplicate field concrete in a laboratory as closely as we could, and then also make that leap to the field and take some field measurements and those kind of things. But thank you for your kind words, Fred. I mean, it's been a heck of a journey so far, and hopefully many, many years to come. But I do have a few more questions for you. I don't want to rush through the questions, but thank you so much for spending the time with me today. So once you establish spray lock concrete protection, and we then have sales agents in the field. We've got projects that we're doing. Things are going well. There came a time when it became apparent that the technical side of the business should be shored up some. And the technical side of the business and the story that we tell, we wanted to let that evolve into something. I don't like using the word evolve, but we wanted that to change into something that engineers and architects and GCs and concrete guys could take to the bank. When we would tell them something, they knew that it was going to perform the way we were telling them. So if you can speak a little bit to that shift in the way we were approaching the market to just set ourselves apart as being a solid, dependable partner.
Sure. I'll do my best to try to explain my thinking and the process that occurred there. When we first started selling the product, since we didn't know really anything much at all about it other than it solved some pretty big concrete problems, all we could do was take marketing material and test results from the company that we'd been dealing with in Australia. And they were very friendly in that process and very cooperative, so we weren't taking anything that wasn't ours. They shared with us their marketing material and how they went to market and so forth. And so in the process of doing that, over a period of time, we learned that they had gotten a little too far out over their skis.
Gotcha.
So, you start off with one claim, and you know how salesmen are. I'm a salesman, so, it's easy to get carried away. And, and the fish was this big, but by the time you finish telling the story 10 times, the fish is like doubled in length.
And that's not uncommon in the concrete world.
Yeah.
We have different technologies in the concrete world where a lot of companies get out over their skis, and they make some claims that sound like it needs a little more scrutiny.
A salesman gets excited and they get a little carried away sometimes, and so it's you don't mean to embellish, you don't mean to go farther than you should. You just it's just the process of telling the fishing story. It just somehow grows a little bit. So once you realize you've made that mistake, then you got to back up and say, hang on a second. Credibility is important.
Yes.
In our adhesive company, what did we do? We figured out what our claims were by finding out where the edges were. Where's the low end? Where's the high end? And then we're going to step a few steps either side and make sure we fit comfortably in a box.
Yes, sir.
So we know what problems we will solve under these certain conditions. So then the challenge became, how do we do the same thing with a concrete treatment? And that's when we realized that we have to invest in a lot more, in better talent and better knowledge of concrete, so that, one, we're using the right terminology, and second, we're able to describe the problem accurately, and even the product. I mean, we weren't even describing our product accurately.
Yeah.
And so we had to, learn from other professionals that had good practical skills.
Yes, sir.
Not only in the lab, but also in the field, to help us to figure out safely what can we claim that we do, and stay away from anything we don't do. And there are a handful of things we've seen this product do, but you can't repeat it successfully enough times to say, hey, we can solve this problem, or we can cause this to happen in concrete, because we can't reproduce it enough times to say that with certainty. And there's some mysteries within concrete that, may make it so that scenario won't always work out.
Yes.
And so let's don't talk about that.
Sure.
No, but we did some exploration, in some studies, looking at cracking in concrete.
Yes.
And so in the process of doing that, we realized that under certain circumstances, we can reduce cracking.
Yeah.
But there's a whole lot of other circumstances that arise that have nothing to do with us, and they're just, it's like a structural issue or something. I don't care how much concrete treatment you put on something, you're not going to solve a structural issue.
Right, exactly.
And so on and so forth. And there are a number of other examples, and so we're like, maybe we don't want to talk so much about cracking prevention anymore, or if we do, let's define it very, very tightly.
Right. Yep.
And so, because we want the expectations to be set in a certain way, and I would always like to at least slightly exceed those expectations. I don't ever want to fall short.
Yeah, I got you. So I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds to me like relationships are important to you.
Yeah, very much so.
So you want the claims to match up with the performance, or if anything, if the performance exceeds the claims that the customer was sold. We want to have them to have as a minimum level of performance what the claims were, but it's also nice when they get in their minds more than what they're paying for.
Absolutely. Okay. And then the second level of the tech support that I wanted to offer customers and potential customers is have concrete experts on staff that could consult with them on various other issues that come up that might not involve our product.
I'm so glad you mentioned that.
we're in the relationship and the problem solving business.
Yes.
And if you're a stand up guy and you're interested in helping someone solve their problems, even if we're not the answer, you develop relationships for life, and you'll eventually end up doing business. It just ends up working out, but that can't always be your goal.
Right.
Sometimes you just want to be a stand-up guy and help out here.
And that was interesting you brought that up, because in many of my first conversations with potential customers or partners out there in the world, I will bring that up, and I'll say, look, you may not want to jump in right now and do a job with us, but I want you to keep my phone number in your phone, because there might or will come a time when you're faced with a concrete issue that you might not be able to explain. I may not know the answer, but chances are I know where to find an answer. So please call me. So it's good to know that I hadn't strayed from the script, is what I'm getting at. That you genuinely want us doing those relationship building activities, whether or not a sale is attached to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Life is short, and you want to have a relationship with as many good people as you can find.
Oh, excellent. And that's one of the things I love about working here is the relationship that I have with you and your son Michael, who runs who's the president of the Spraylock Concrete Protection side of the business, and I'm working on getting him into one of these. By the way, I don't know if it'll happen, but we'll see. But those relationships are what makes coming to work every day fun for me. And not just internal, but those external relationships we've built through the years, and the guys that call me up and offer up, hey, I got one you might be able to help me with, Brent. What in the heck's going on? I'll send you some pictures. Help me out with this. And most of the time we can help them, and sometimes I may not, depending on what it is. There might be another person who's a better fit for them to help answer their questions, and I'll try to send them that way. So thank you very much for bringing that up. So where do you see Spraylock Concrete Protection going in the future?
Well, we do pretty well in the market segment for concrete related to flooring applications.
Yes, sir.
So that was kind of our natural go-to spot, because it's the segment of the industry we know.
Right, yeah.
So that was the easier way to go. And I still want to grow that, because really we've still in infancy level as far as market potential.
Yes, sir.
But I like the fact that within the concrete industry there are so many diverse market opportunities. And whether it's precast, whether it's more of an industrial manufacturing type environment,
concrete exposed to seawater.
Yeah. That's huge, because seawater concrete, it takes a beating. So
yes.
If we can do something to increase its longevity, many times over, then it's not a lot of money spent to really lengthen the life of your concrete or to keep it from getting any worse.
Right. Yes, sir. And that's a great point, because we know that durability has become a hot topic in the world of concrete lately, and not the show, the actual world, but also at the show. So as people become more and more aware that their concrete is not lasting as long as we want it to, then that durability concern is crawling to the forefront. It hasn't been a sprint. It has been a crawl, but it seems like that more and more people are talking durability now. And for me as a concrete guy, my blood's gray, I believe. As a concrete guy, I'd love to see that, and I'm thankful that we're finally overcoming our false sense of permanence that concrete has. And I mean, heck, we even describe an idea that's got staying power as being a concrete idea. We know that's a solid idea.
Yeah.
So it's easy to think of concrete as being long-lasting or even lasting for a lifetime, but the reality is much different, and I'm so thankful that the products that we have here have an answer for that and can extend concrete life. And to me, I don't know how you feel, but to me, that's the best way to address sustainability and environmental concerns.
Absolutely.
Let's build it once in 100 years instead of having to build it 3 times. kind of my take on it. So,
Absolutely, I completely agree.
yep. So with that, I think we can wrap today's episode. Unless you've got anything you'd like to add.
Well, the only other kind of afterthought is the going back to one of the appeals of this particular technology and this particular company that really struck me was the fact that they made it themselves, and they had guarded the trade secrets of making the product extremely well, and they had a very Bill developed a very unique approach to building a colloidal silica.
Yes.
And I don't know how long colloidal silicas have been around. I mean, do you know how far they go back?
They've been around for 75 or 100 years. They've been around for a long time. But in concrete usage is probably about the time that Bill was working on his. There was a few other folks experimenting with colloidal silicas, including U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, I believe. So there's a collective colloidal silica history, but Bill's product is definitely unique in that it was developed specifically for concrete, and the performance that concrete and cement-based materials, in the case of the undersea wells, concrete and Portland cement-based materials benefit from the products and Bill's forward thinking in the way that he engineered the formulation. Many colloidal silicas, if not, I'd be tempted to say all but Spraylock, are developed and put on the shelf, and they have multiple purposes, multiple uses, multiple ways that they go to market, including things like cosmetics, paints, etc. But Bill's unique colloidal silica was developed for concrete and cement-based materials, and I haven't found anything that performs the way that the Spraylock concrete protection products perform when it comes to limiting things like chloride diffusion, limiting water and water vapor. And for me, I'm singing that from the mountaintops every day that I can, and with the understanding that sometimes some things sound too good to be true, and I try to lead with finding ways to help people get that this product is really what we say it is, and it does do exactly what we say it does. And you got to use it. It's super easy to use, super simple application, but you do have to use it the way we recommend to make sure that the product gets into the concrete, etc. So I think we're in a really, really good place for the future.
Yeah.
I think that as more people become aware of durability issues with concrete, especially with, I don't know if you and I haven't talked about this, but the new 1L cements that are out there right now are causing some concerns. There are places that increased water demands have been reported. There are workability issues that have been reported. Hopefully, those will all go away. But increased water demand equals more permeability. I mean, that's what it all boils down to. If you put more water in your concrete, you're going to have more bleed water channels, capillary void formation happen, and that then creates more issues with flooring and other concrete for concrete durability purposes. So thanks for joining us today, and if you have an issue if you're wondering what's going on with your concrete, or you have an issue that you can't quite explain, as Fred said, we're here to help, and that's our number one business is to be a resource for you guys that are doing this every single day. And if you're interested enough to listen to the podcast, then you're interested enough to give us a call. So give us a shout at 423-305-6151, or shoot us an email, scptech@spraylock.com, or scptech@concreteprotection.com, I should have said, or abrollins@concreteprotection.com. Thank you so much for joining us, Fred.
My pleasure.
And best wishes for a great 4th.
Thank you. You too. You too.
Thanks for joining us for Two Wheelbarrows and a Place We Call Home with Josh Carroll and Brent Rollins.